So I was watching this documentary about a certain airline that served really fancy food, and I'm watching through, and about the second, it's like a four-part series, and about the second series was on their food service, and there's a lady sitting in a very nice first class with a fur coat on, and the flight attendant brings her what she called her shrimp platter and sets it down on the table, and it was four shrimp with some sauce drizzled on it. And I would have to say that would just piss me off.
Oh
What?
my God.
What?
Really?
You wanted more than just four shrimp. You wanted at least seven.
That's like sacrilege, man.
Yeah, four shrimp. I mean, that's a bite. That's a bite of shrimp. Come on, guys.
Oh my gosh. That's I dude, seriously, that's like you can't give me you have to like the minimum is at least five shrimp.
At least five.
Uh
That's what
huh.
you would get with this. That's what you would get with a steak in America.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, shoot, you can go to a dumpster and find more than that in there.
Exactly.
Oh my lord, that's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm Captain Cliff, and you're listening to the History of Aviation podcast.
What was it we had for dinner tonight?
Well, we had a choice, steak, fish.
Yes, I remember I had lasagna.
Hello and welcome to the History of Aviation podcast. I'm Derek Beeler. On this episode number 76, we have a good one lined up for you today about the evolution of airline food. But first off, I'm joined by our producer, Mr. Shay Jones. How's it going, Shay?
I'm doing pretty good. I am not muted. Not muted.
Not this
I'm here.
time.
I'm here. I'm doing good.
Doing good. And also joined by Julian and a Globe.
Hey guys,
How
how's
are
it
you,
going? Good. How are you? So I picked up these nice little I call them props, aviation props, because aviation is all about global connectivity. So I'll be spinning the globe, and we'll see where we end up landing, and then we can go travel there. So yeah, so just keep the globe there.
Wow. There you go.
Exactly. And jumping into this, Julian, I think a good place to start if we're going to talk about airline food is back in the golden age of aviation. How different airline food was then opposed to now.
Hmm. Yes, and so that's a very good intro, Derek. So in the 60s and 70s, during the golden age of aviation, airlines tried to mimic or copy what the cruise lines were doing. And so the cruise lines had full um, uh, cutlery and fine dining experience. And so airlines tried to duplicate that in the air. And so they came around with trolleys, and they came around with roast, and they would slice the roast, and they had sausages, and they had sliced those sausages and with cheese platters and wine, because they wanted to duplicate that fine dining experience that cruise lines offered their passengers. And so in those days, it was just caviar and flowing with champagne, and it was quite the dining experience to um, have a meal served up in the sky. And so this is how where it kind of started with the golden age of aviation. And keep in mind that in those days, tickets were very pricey. And so airlines had the budgets and to um, allocate to these kinds of fancy, elaborate meals. The flight attendants would come around with special tongs and serve you with hot towels and on and on. And but then as the time went on, aviation became deregulated And so this is the time of aviation where government had tried to relinquish control of aviation, of the aviation industry, and try to make it more of a free market. And so in by doing that, government lost the pricing control of the aviation and the ticket sales, and it became more of a competitive market. And we saw the entrance of the low-cost carrier, the no-frills budget airlines, and they would come into the market, and they would come in with lower prices. And so to cut on the budgets and to offer the lower prices, one of the things that got chopped was the in-flight meals. And so this is where the in-flight meal started having a digression. So it kind of fell apart a little bit. And Derek, what do you have? What are your thoughts of the deregulation, and how did it affect the aviation and the meal service?
My screen's completely froze.
Oh, okay.
We can still hear you.
But I don't.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but I don't have notes or anything.
Oh, okay.
Like my computer is completely like locked up. I can just hear you guys.
Oh, okay.
But what I was going to say is, in all of my years of traveling hundreds of flights, I have never actually been on a flight that served a meal. I've always been on 1 to 2 hour flights.
So
Yeah.
I think the little bit maybe a little bit of I might have an advantage over you. Back in the day in 1989, I flew with Air Canada from Vancouver to Edmonton, and the flight was not more than an hour, and we were served a hot meal on a 1 hour flight.
Wow.
And and
that's kind of rare.
In those days, so 1989, so we're talking good 35 years ago, but the flight attendants were warming up the meals during boarding. So as soon as the flight attendants got on board, they would turn on the ovens and warm up those meals. And while you were boarding the aircraft, they were warming the meals. And as soon as the seatbelt sign went off, they were in the aisle. They gave you your meal. They cleaned everything up, and then they landed the airplane. So it was a quick turnaround on the meal. And but that was 35 years ago. So times have changed, and so now they don't have the that they don't serve meals anymore on 1 hour flights, as you expressed. So now it's a lot of buy on board. However, the industry still puts its mark on luxury travel, and it's only in business class that aviation really
gets the full-on meal.
Yes, you got it. And this is where airlines really compete each other for that competitive advantage, chasing that premium dollar in business class. So if you're flying business class, Derek, I will be assured you will get not only an in-flight meal, but you'll probably be invited to a very posh lounge with a buffet, or where you can get your pre-flight meal. So before your flight, you can go to the lounge and you can experience the buffet. And I remember years ago, we were flying with Lufthansa in Europe, and we were flying business class, and we were had access to the business lounge. And while working for Air Canada, there was also access for the business lounge, not for employees, of course, but for those passengers that flew business class. They had access to that lounge, and it was a buffet with olives and cold cuts, and you could order whatever drinks you wanted. And so this experience does exist. And it's only in a business class that airlines really have go that extra mile to make that mark and reinforce that brand loyalty in giving that sumptuous, elegant dining experience. And you'll often get like presented with a little menu, and you'll have a choice of maybe appetizers and maybe 2 or 3 meals, entrees. So you could choose between like the steak or the fish and maybe a vegetarian dish. And then there's always a selection of 2 red wines and 2 white wines. So you have the choice. So there's lots of options to give that exquisite dining experience that is the hallmark of business class travel. And it's gone so far that the airlines can compete for the distinguished prizes or awards through the Sky Tracks. So Sky Tracks will evaluate the in-flight meal based on passenger reviews and on comparative evaluations. And so there are various awards that are granted to the airlines based on by Sky Tracks on an objective level. And so they could include various things. And they're very prestigious if an airline is awarded international recognition for their in-flight meal. And so by contrary, the economy cabin meals are much more simple and in their structure and in their budget. And many short flights, they just simply don't offer a meal anymore. You're lucky if you can get a beverage with some peanuts or some
Right.
cookies. Yeah.
Really, and even sometimes any sort of meal you have, they charge you for it.
Well, yeah. So it's called
Anything more than a bag of peanuts or pretzels, they'll charge you for it.
and this is correct. And so this is done through, that's called an a la carte menu.
Yep.
And so there's an a la carte. You can order your sandwiches beforehand if you wanted a certain sandwich. And then you can order it so that it's available for you on your flight. But flying now has, particularly in North America, flying has really been reduced to a mode of transportation where the bottom line is the price. And so passengers are really looking for that low fare, but it comes at an expense. And so airlines really struggle in trying to maintain that competitive advantage and reinforcing that brand loyalty if everybody is offering exactly the same. Now, back in the days when I was a flight attendant with Air Transat, we were one of the only airlines that offered a mint or a candy service at the end of the flight. And so as the plane descended, we would go around with a tray with little candies or mints, individually wrapped, of course. And it was one of the hallmark services that would distinguish the Air Transat service from other competitors because of that mint service. And so not many airlines did that. Other airlines like WestJet and Sunwing, they offered their champagne class service even in economy, and everybody got a little glass of bubbling champagne when they boarded, and so that was their hallmark service that they would distinguish. But as you pluck out all the bells and whistles, and you minimize that travel experience to the bare bones, passengers don't really have anything to compare it with to another airline because it's just so similar to anything else. And so it's only in business class that airlines really have that opportunity to shine in providing that luxury, just exquisite in-flight experience, coupled with other benefits like points, access to lounges. They also have the chauffeur service. With Emirates, for example, my aunt, she flew from Ghent, from Brussels, and the airline would come pick you up from your house and drive you to the airport and drop you off at the lounge, and then take you from the lounge to the aircraft. And in Dubai, if you had a connecting flight, the Porsche would come and pick you up at the gate and drive you. Yeah, the Porsche, or the, I don't know what they use in Dubai, but Air Canada offers a similar service also in Toronto for business class passengers on connecting flights. And so if the flight time is really short, they can ensure that that business passenger gets that connection, even if it's a short connection, like 30 minutes. They go down the stairs, hop into the car, and the chauffeur will drive them across the tarmac to their other gate, and they go up the stairs and they can board their next aircraft, ensuring that they get that connecting flight, even if the connection times are really, really tight.
Now that's living.
Yeah, I've actually got something I want to show you. I have here, I recorded something for a documentary that I'm making, but I just have it all categorized here. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to not include the audio, so it better not. But there we go. I'm going to play this. This is like a sweeping B-roll shot that I did, intended to show or showcase the meal that I got on one of my business class trips with United. I can't remember if I think it's to Brazil. And we were talking about Brazil last year, I believe, or early this year in one of our podcasts, talking about United and Azul and all that stuff. So I'm going to play this, and I'll try to pause it where you can see all the food. It's really quite something. Whenever you experience it, it's quite special, especially if you're used to flying not business class. So so check this out.
Yeah.
Get the ginger ale going. Look at all that food.
Look at that salad, yeah.
That is incredible. So I'll pause it right there. So that's the meal right there. You got your cutlery here. You got little salt and pepper shakers. You got your General Peanuts. I forget what this is. That's a cookie. That's a roll. There's your butter. You got a good Cobb salad going on. And I believe this is meatloaf. This is meatloaf with some carrots and potatoes, and I think that's regular unmashed potatoes as well. But it's just a stark difference between a bag of peanuts and this.
And so
Absolutely.
this was for business class?
This was business class, yeah. So this is one of those things. Remember how I told you before how I asked to be upgraded?
Yeah.
So this was one of those ones where I bought a regular flight, a regular coach flight, and I made sure I knew where my gate was, and I got everything all squared away, and I had a little bit of time before all of this went down. So what I did was I paid $25, and I entered in one of the lounges, the lesser lounge, right? Not the first class lounge, obviously. Right. And so I went in, and there just happened to be a concierge in there, like you were mentioning. And I asked the person, I said, I'm going on this flight. There's my ticket. And so he looked it up, and he goes, what do you need to know? What do you need? And so I said, he wasn't that rude, by the way. That's just me projecting. So he was basically asking, what do I need for information? And I said, I want to know if there's any first class or business class seats left available for this flight. And if there is one, how much would it cost me to upgrade to it? And so he looks it up, and he says, there's a few available, and there's one on this side of the plane, and there's one on this side of the plane. Which side would you like? And so I said this side, And he said, okay, the cost is $500. And at the time, I only spent $1,000 for the regular ticket to get there and back. And when he said $500, I mean, I had a credit card burning a hole in my pocket. I was like, do you realize, like, if you were, and this is during the holiday, this is during Christmas. And so for $500 more, I can get away with flying first class for a total of $1,500 round trip.
Right.
So it's hit or miss, right? So I always tell people, like, if you're going to go on a long trip like that, it's worth at least asking, and see what it costs, because I got the meal, I got the leg room, I got my own space, and then I got to use the shower. I got to use one of the little, they have like the lounge that they have that you pay for is like, it's still fine because it's like a little bar and you can kind of have chairs and relax and stuff. But the first class lounge for international travel, that it's to boot, man. It's like there's no topping it. It is perfect.
Right.
You usually have like a buffet, like you were mentioning. You can go and get as much food as you want. You don't have to pay a darn thing. I never did the alcohol, so I don't know if it costs for alcohol. Typically it would, I would imagine.
Yeah.
In the first class lounge, it wouldn't?
No.
No. Okay, well that's even more awesome. So there's that. And then when you're done, you still got an hour left before your flight, and you're either coming or going. And usually you feel more gross coming home. So you want to go in there if you got time before you get on your next flight and use the shower, freshen yourself up,
Exactly.
And then now you can get on the next flight. You've got your food, you've got your alcohol if that's your pleasure. You can even take a nap. They even, like, some of them even have like napping stations. Like it's so worth it to try and fly first class if you can swing it, or if you can get it comped, or if you can upgrade for not that much more money. But it definitely would have been at least $4 or $5 grand if I bought the ticket originally as a business class than it did to get for $1,500 on the day. You know what I mean?
So this is a sales strategy from the airlines. So they do try to maximize the revenue for all their seats, including economy, premium economy, and business class. And so they're trying to get that premium dollar by selling those seats in advance. And so as you are,
so I just got lucky that there was some available. So.
Yeah. So as you are well aware, air seats on an aircraft are a perishable product or a perishable service, because as soon as the plane lifts off, the empty seats are gone, and that's inventory that is lost forever. And so the airline will never be able to recuperate that empty seat. And so the airline does recognize that there are people that are not flying business class regularly, and so they fly economy, and yet there are seats available in business class. And so they'll put out this program, as you suggested, which was last minute upgrade. And so for a small fee, an economy passenger such as yourself can experience that premium service for a small fee. And for the airline, it's great because they're now upgrading.
You did get a little bit of extra money, although it wasn't what you wanted. You still got a little bit of a bump.
A little bit more extra, and a business class seat or an economy seat, either way, it's lost inventory. And so by offering the last minute upgrade, you're able to experience that, and now you're able to talk about and promote that business.
I have flown first class. I mean, when you do you count the down and back as one flight, or do you count each time as its own flight?
Well, it could be each leg is it's your own flight. I had a friend in Toronto, and he was a businessman, and every week he was sitting in business class, and he knew all the lounges in Argentina and Frankfurt and Dubai, all over the place. Every week he was in business class, so he traveled a lot, and every time he had a little pouch, and he would bring the pouch home. He had an entire armoire full of business class amenity kits. And I said, please, can I have some? And so he was so gracious to share those business class amenity kits with me. But this is one strategy. Now, what airlines sometimes do is they put a bidding system available for passengers who want to bid on business class seats. So in your scenario, there was plenty of seats, and possibly you were the only one that expressed interest. However, on some routes, you might have only 2 seats available, but you'll have 5 people wanting to get that upgrade for that small premium. And then it becomes an awkward situation for the airline on who gets that upgrade for that small fee. And so then there's on a flight, there's a seniority list, believe it or not. So it goes by your class cabin and then your rewards status. So if you're a frequent flyer with that airline, you have more privilege with that airline than somebody that does not have that premium status. And so if you have premium status with the airline, you will get preferred selection for those seats, even if you're not the first one at the airport that afternoon, because of your flying status or how many points you've accumulated. And then it goes, then there's another pecking order and so forth. So there is a bidding system in place to acquire those, to purchase those seats. But back to meals. So the in-flight meal is really one of the hallmarks of the travel experience. And above all, many passengers feel that the in-flight meal is one of the distinguished experiences, part of the experience of the whole travel experience.
I was just going to say, it can make or break the flight.
Absolutely.
Well, this is true. And so often people, if the flight is on time, often people will rate the meal very highly. However, if the flight is late, then everything on the flight is bad, including the meals. Yeah, including the meals, including the uniforms, including the wine, including the movie, because one thing has triggered it, and now the whole thing is negative.
It's ruined.
So obvious, it's called black brushing. So one thing goes bad, and then they black brush everything else. So this is very typical for the industry. The in-flight meal has really become a hallmark experience of its own. And airlines search the globe far and wide, as I have one here, to search out culinary chefs of the highest distinction to prepare menus for their in-flight guests. And so often for kitchens, so some airlines in some hubs, they are cooking meals for 25,000 passengers a day, which is no small feat. And so the culinary kitchens in these big hubs are just mammoth operations. And so there are chefs that are assigned to each service or destination classification. So you'll have a chef that's assigned to the economy cabin, and then one to the business cabin or to certain destination groupings. The in-flight meal, they tend to do a lot of research on it because, believe it or not, up in the air, your taste buds are slightly different than on the ground.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and so they have to adjust the spices a little bit, or the savorings a little bit, to appeal to the palate up in the sky at 35,000 feet, as well as to the palate of your destination group. So certain cultural groups, their palates are much different. Some people prefer more neutral foods, and some cultures prefer more pungent or spicy foods. And so the palates, the foods are designed with that destination in mind. And so for those young people who are looking for careers as an aviation culinary chef, then I have some advice for you. You could start by studying culinary arts or food science or hospitality management, and then look for internships with major catering providers and apply directly with an airline in their culinary departments. And so many airlines, many airports may have um, uh, multiple kitchens or uh, meal in-flight meal service providers. For example, at Toronto Airport, we had Gate Gourmet, and we had two other catering companies that would provide in-flight meals. And so an airline, it could choose one or another. It's unhealthy to have only one service provider at an airport because it creates a situation of a monopoly. And so this is not healthy.
There's that, but then I've actually been on a flight before I took my business class trip. There was an issue with the food. They found a contaminant in the food, and the flight ended up being like very delayed because they didn't have backup available. So that would be another reason why I would say it's probably wise to, one, have a backup, but two, have multiple companies that are at your disposal. You're like, hey, I need something in 10 minutes. Can you get here now? That way you're still delayed. Give them time to get there, upload all the stuff they need. Because it's quite the process. Like, you got to get one of those big trucks that come up to the side of the plane, like offload both kitchens, right? And then, because you got two, usually, depending on the size of the plane, you got two things you got to offload, and you got two things you got to onload and get it all ready. Then you can, hunker it down and take off. But so that makes sense why you should have two or three different people at your disposal that you can call upon if needed.
Yeah, and I was going to say, just to elaborate with Julian. So with these careers, so if you're a chef, you would work for the catering company, not technically for the airline, correct?
Yeah. So
Good question.
So it may depend. So it depends if the airline has their kitchen in-house. They may have their own kitchen. They may do their own catering, or they may subcontract that out to a third party. So in the case of Toronto, they had Gate Gourmet, and Gate Gourmet did all the catering for multiple airlines. The airline would say, well, this is our menu, this is our brand. We want our tray set up like this. Can you do that? Yes, sir. And then they would provide it accordingly. And then there were three catering companies that did that. One was for, you mentioned food contamination, but also for a price, competitive pricing. However, in the case of Air Canada, they also have an operation called the Jets, which is a sector of the airline operation that caters exclusively to high-profile clients like hockey teams. And so when the hockey team needs to travel, they have one dedicated aircraft, and it's exclusively business class from front to back. And so these
like the seats and everything?
Yeah,
or just like the service.
No, the seats are it's all business class the whole way. So there's it's just they just,
and for those that don't really realize that have never flown first class, depending on the flight, they're not just like bigger seats. We're talking like every row it's like weird. Like you have like one row goes this way and then another seat's this way, so they kind of offset each other. And so you basically have your own area. At least that's the experience that I've had with first class.
So those are like little pods. But I think they had on this particular aircraft, it was bigger seats.
Just bigger seats.
Yes, and the meals were not catered by any of those companies, but from the keg And so it was an exclusive restaurant that was hired to make the meals exclusively for those flights, because there were sports teams, and they had to have they wanted big steaks like this, and that was a much different dining experience. And so, Derek, did you have a question? Did you wanted to add another comment?
I was going to say, is there a job? Yeah, like I said, most of the flights I've ever been on have been 1 to 2 hour flights. I know nothing about meals on flights. So is there a coordinator job within the airline that would coordinate with the catering companies? Is that a
I would
possible
imagine
career?
so.
Yes. So there is that's called in-flight. There's one person that would set the menus for the season, for an example, on European or Southern destinations. There's another job title called galley designer, which could be interpreted as two things. Galley designer is the one that physically makes the galleys out of metal. And the other one is the soft components of galley designer, which is allocating which items go in which compartments. And so you have a galley designer that may say, okay, so on Southern destinations, we're going to set up our galley like this. And on European destinations or Asian destinations, we're going to set up our galleys like this. And we're going to offer these and these types of services, depending on the destination, the length of flight, that kind of stuff. If it's a morning flight or an afternoon flight, the service is this way. And if it's an evening flight, the expectations are much different. And so therefore the catering on board is much different, and how things are configured are much different, depending also on the length of flight. So if you're only doing 2 hour flights, there is a galley designer who designed that flight and says, we'll just put beverages and peanuts here. But on longer flights, you may have
it's almost choreographed.
Yeah, it is. 2 hot meals and a snack service and 3 beverage carts. So then it becomes a much more.
C3B does not get any more peanuts. He's already asked me 4 times.
There you go.
Absolutely.
You got it.
Man, I feel like this has been a really good episode. I feel like there's a lot of information here. I know we've kind of gone over just a little bit, but this has been a really good, in-depth conversation. I feel like there's more to it. So if anybody has questions about this type of stuff, they should definitely let us know on the website, and we'll perhaps we can talk about more, have like a part 2. But yeah, I'm amazed at this world of food on planes.
So in closing remarks, the airlines have also made their thing to introduce green cutlery, and you'll see bamboo cutlery on your next flight as well.
Cool. Nice.
So yeah, guys, absolutely enjoyed it. Great talk.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like I mentioned before, this is a really good topic, and we'll probably have to revisit it sometime, because I know we like to try and keep our podcast anywhere between 40-45 minutes, just to keep everybody's attention on the one thing. But this has been a really good episode. I really did enjoy it. Thank you, Jillian, for putting this together.
Yeah, absolutely, Jillian. And Jillian, aviation career coach, where can folks get a hold of you?
So you can visit my website at www.julianmartinson.com. And you can also find me on social media at YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.
Nice.
Absolutely. And with the History of Aviation podcast, that we are, I would officially say we're everywhere, right? We are YouTube, we are Twitter, we are TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. But the main place we want you to get all your information is www.hoapod.com, which is our new website. So go there. You can do anything you want there. So definitely check that out. So hope everybody enjoyed the show. I appreciate you guys. For Julian Martinson, Shay Jones producing, I'm Derek Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.